Hi, cool coders. Today we're going to be looking at dictionaries in Python, and this is a data structure similar to a list or a tuple, but instead of using indexes to store data, it's going to use something like a word to store data instead. And it gets its name because it looks like a dictionary in memory where you have a word and then something that looks like a definition, but we can really store pretty much any kind of data with that word. So let's go right to the deck and get some nomenclature and then look at some code samples of what makes a dictionary work in Python. So when we talk about dictionaries in Python, we have what we call a set of key value pairs. Now, if you think back to the book that is a dictionary, you have a list of words. That would be the analog to our keys in a dictionary in Python. And then associated with each word, you have a definition, and that would be the analog to our values in Python. So if I have a list of words, I really need those to all be unique in my dictionary for it to actually make sense. Now, when I create these inside of Python, I'm going to be using what we call square or curly braces right here, and they look like that in our code. So I'm going to be using a set of unique keys that can have same value, but the keys need to be unique, and I'm going to be denoting that with a set of curly braces. So the code would actually look like this. And I have my variable named, in this case, called dict1, and there's my curly braces right there, and there's my closing curly braces as well. So there are my keys. In this case, my keys are mule, source, and year, and then the values associated with those keys are what comes after the colon right here. So I need the colon between the key and the value right there. And then once I have my colon and my key and my value, I need to make sure that I have my commas between each of the entries in my dictionary to denote that it's a new entry. So this is how you set it up in code. So let's go over to the IDE and take a look at one of these examples in code. I've got my IDE here. I've got Tony up. I'm going to paste in my dictionary here. So I've created this dictionary and I have it ready in memory. So I wanted to show you the various features of this in code. Notice it's doing some syntax highlighting by opening and closing my curly braces here and putting those in blue. Now, this is my variable name, and these are the keys that I have declared here. So I've got a key called Zorse, and the value for it is a hybrid horse and zebra. Then my next key is mule, and it's hybrid horse and donkey. And then Zonkey is a hybrid zebra and donkey. And this is my code here that I'm using to create this using a hard-coded example. So let's just print this and see what happens if I actually print out the whole structure. So my words, and this is going to print the list, or really my dictionary, out in its entirety. So it's just basically taking what I typed in here and printing it back to my shell. So that's how you create a dictionary in code. We're going to be working with this though as we work through some more of the slides and more of the code samples. So to get values and assign values inside of Python to a dictionary, we simply use square brackets as we see here. Those are denoted by the square brackets like we saw when we were working with tuples and indexes when we would pass in an index. So something very similar to what we were doing there. And here is a code sample where I have a dictionary defined, and then I'm accessing a particular key inside of this dictionary using this line of code right here. And the output of that, of course, is going to be 2020. Now, if I wanted to reassign that value, I simply just say dict1 year, and I say a new value 2021 using an equals sign right there like we use for assigning variables, and then I can then reprint that value, and then the output of that, of course, is going to be 2021. So very straightforward on how you can use the square brackets to access and change data inside of Python using dictionaries. Similar to how we actually reassign values inside of Python and dictionaries is also going to be how we can add values to a dictionary. So if I had a code sample that looks like this, pretty much the same dictionary as we saw before. But if I said print dict1 right here, I'm going to get output 2020. But notice what I'm doing here is I have a new key that I'm adding by way of a square bracket right here. And I'm saying new key equals 2021, and this adds year 2 to the dictionary as well as assign it a value. And then if I go print year 2, it's going to output 2021 as expected right there. So similar to how we reassign values, you can also use that to add values to a dictionary as well. Similar to how we removed values from a list, we can also use the delete or del keyword to remove values from a dictionary. So if I had this sample code right here, I have my dictionary and I want to remove, say, this key and value right here, I simply call del or delete dict1 and then pass in the key for that. And if I try to print this after removing it, it's going to give me an error. And that's what I want to happen if the value is not inside of my particular dictionary. So let's go over to Python inside of my IDE, and let's look at a couple of examples where I'm going to be manipulating the values inside of a dictionary by changing values, adding values, and removing them using the various things that we've just looked at. Okay, I'm back here in an empty file in Tony, and I'm going to paste in the dictionary that I had from my first example. I'm going to do print, and let's just say my words. Now, what I want to do first here is I want to change a value inside of this particular dictionary. So let's make that right. So let's take my dictionary name here, and I'm going to change one of the actual keys inside of this, not change the key itself, but change the value of that key. So I simply use a equal sign to do that. So let's take this definition here, and let's just change the word order a little bit. And let's say donkey and zebra, and let's do that. And let's do a before and after right here, so we can see the actual change. Not that we can't see it right there, but just to show you that when I actually run this, I have zonkey, a hybrid zebra and donkey, and then zonkey down here is a hybrid donkey and zebra. So it simply just changed the word order, nothing substantial about it, but I changed the value for this particular key. Likewise, if I wanted to add a value to this, I can use a equal sign to do that. So let's say I wanted to add another one to this. Let's say Prius, and that's going to be a hybrid electric and gas vehicle. And if I run this now with a print, I should get something very similar to what I saw down here, and that is a new dictionary displayed that is going to have my new key value pair added to it. Now let's go ahead and do one more thing here, and let's go ahead and remove an item from this. So instead of changing something, let's just delete something from this. So I'm going to use the delete keyword here, DL, and I'm simply just going to pass in the name of the key that I want to remove. So let's remove mule, and let's do a print words and see what happens on that case. So this one doesn't have the key mule in it anymore. It simply has Zorse, Zonkey, Prius, and the one for mule has been removed. So you can see here how you can change, add, and remove items from a dictionary using some very simple, easy to use syntax in Python. For loops with dictionaries is also going to be very familiar to us as well, because we've seen this with loops and tuples already, so it's going to look very much the same thing. The main difference between a dictionary and a tuple or a list is that a for loop in this case is going to loop over the keys. So if I did a for loop here, I'm going to have a dictionary that's going to look like this, and then I'm going to have a for loop that's going to say for key. So this is going to be a variable right here inside of my dictionary. And then if I did a print key, it's simply just going to print the key out, and then this will print the value out because I'm referencing it by key. So dict key 1 will then print the value for whatever that key is referencing at that time. So it's going to print mule, then the value for mule is going to print key Zorse, then the value for that. Then it's going to print year, and then the value for that as well. So let's go over to Tony and take a look at this and see how it works. It's pretty straightforward, so this won't take very long at all. Okay, I'm here in a new file inside of Tony, and I'm going to paste in that dictionary that I have already defined for a couple of my other examples. I'm simply going to create a for loop here, for x in my words. I need to make sure I spell that right, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. And I'm going to start a new code block here. I'm going to print out x. Let's run this and see what happens. And what I get is a list of my keys. So Zorse, Mule, Zonkey, Zorse, Mule, Zonkey. That's exactly what I have up there inside of my definition. So let's print out the values for this. So whenever I reference a value, up to now, we've just basically been hard coding the reference to the particular key that I want. But I can also use a variable to do the exact same thing. So if I wanted to reference Zorse, I would have just hard coded the value like that. However, because I can also use variables in places of strings, I can simply put in X right there. And so what this is going to do is just print the key right here, and this is going to print the value. So let's just say prints key, And this right here will print value. And let's see what happens when I run this. It's going to be exactly as we expect. We're going to see Zorse, a hybrid horse and zebra, mule, a hybrid horse and donkey, and Zonkey, a hybrid zebra and donkey. So you can see there we're just doing some simple printing of the keys and values using a for loop. So with Python, you can also use the in keyword to test to see if there is a particular key in a dictionary as well. So we will simply have an if statement that looks like this. So I have my dictionary defined right here. So if I say if Zorse in dict1, and if that is true, then it will come into our code block and it will do whatever is in our code block as defined by our code here. So it would print okay. If I didn't have Zorse, say that was not there, this would evaluate to false, and then I would just simply skip over what is in that code block and I would just continue exiting my program. So this is very useful for testing the existence of things in a particular dictionary. You can use it for lists and tuples as well, as we've seen already, but it works for dictionaries as well. So I can also get a list of keys and values from my dictionary as well. When I mean list, I mean an actual object that is a list that I can reference like a standard list. So let's say I have a set of code that looks like this. I have my dictionary and I want to get a list that represents the keys inside of my dictionary. So I'm going to simply call dict1 and then I'm going to do a dot and I'm going to say keys. But I need to do a cast right here so that it comes back as the appropriate type of object that I can use and address that like I would a standard list. And if I print that out, I'm simply just going to get a list of the keys that I already have inside of my dictionaries. Likewise, if I did the same thing on dot values, I would just get a list of the values that I would have. And if I print those out, of course, I'm just going to get a list printed back to the shell of the values that I have in my dictionary as well. So this can be very useful for getting a list of values. Now we can loop over the keys very easily in Python by simply doing a for in loop over the actual dictionary itself. But if I wanted to loop over the values in that and just do a for loop over those, I can first get a list by grabbing the values, doing a conversion to a list, and then doing a for loop over those values, just like I would any other list that I have inside of my code. So let's go over to Tony and take a look at this and see how I can get these lists from my dictionary. Okay, I've got a new file here and I've already got my dictionary in it. And I just simply want to grab a list of the keys and values from this. So first thing I'm going to do is get my keys. And this is just going to be a list of the keys in this. So I'm going to do a list and I'm going to simply call my words dot keys. And then I will get a list of keys from that. So I'm needing my equal signs. If I do print my keys, I will get a list of my keys. So let's just call that and see what happens. So Zorse, mule, and Zonkey. And that is a list. So if I do print, just to show you that it is a list, I can do an index on that, 0, and that should just print out the first item in my list, which would be Zorse. And that is what we get right here. Yep. That's exactly what we got. So that's a good way to get the actual keys in a list form out of my dictionary. And I can also do the same thing for values here. So if I want to go to my values and then change my variable name to my values, if I print out my values and then I get the first value out of there, we're going to get something that looks pretty much the same. In this case, I get a list of values right here. And then I get the first value, which is then going to be a string that is a hybrid horse and zebra, which corresponds, of course, to the first key, which is Zorse. So here you can see that you can get the keys and the values as lists where they're disjointed from their keys are disjointed from the values, or the values are disjointed from the keys. This can be useful for whenever you want to loop over things like values, or you just want to work with these as independent lists rather than having them bound together as a dictionary like we see here. So this has been a pretty straightforward lesson on dictionaries, and a very short one considering the length of some of the other ones that we've done. It's a pretty straightforward concept and builds on top of listen tuples already. So I want you to use this idea though in this week's challenge, where you are going to create a vocabulary quiz. So basically I want you to create a dictionary, if you will, of words and definitions, except the words in this case will be your keys and the definitions will be your values. And then I want you to select and display a definition and then the words that a user can choose from. So in other words, you want to randomly select a word and then display its definition. And then print out the words that are possible options for that particular definition or word that you selected. So then you will prompt the user to enter the word that they think matches the definition that you randomly chose. And then if they enter in the right word, then they won the game. Okay, here is my example. You can see I'm using random, of course, because I want you to randomly pick something, but I haven't shown you the rest of my code. So let's go ahead and run this so you can see what I'm looking for. So this is what I have here. I have my randomly selected definition that I'm displaying here, a zebra horse hybrid. And I'll display my words from my dictionary here. This is really the keys. I want you to display those. And then I want you to put in the match for this. So a zebra horse hybrid, that would be a Zorse. And I need to spell it correctly so that it matches. So I would get correct in that regard. So if I run this again, I should get a different definition here. So I have a zebra donkey hybrid, and that would be a zonkey, of course, but I want to put in something that's the wrong answer, and I would get wrong if I did that. So let's run this one more time just so you can see another definition. A leopard lion hybrid. So I think that is a leopon, and let's run that, and that's congrats. So you can see that I'm getting a new definition each time I run it, and then I'm displaying the same source words that I can choose from, and then I'm just typing in the actual key that goes along with that definition right there. And if it matches, say congrats. If it doesn't, say wrong. So this is a fairly easy to implement vocab quiz. So try to challenge yourself and do this one. It's probably not as hard as some of the other ones we've done, but it will certainly get you working with some of the things that we've talked about in this lesson dealing with dictionaries. If you like this content, please consider liking this video, then clicking on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel, then clicking on the bell notification icon and selecting all so that you'll get notifications when new content becomes available on our channel. You can also click on the share icon and share this video to any of your social media platforms. Sharing this helps make it more widely available for those who might be interested in coding. Also, consider following us on Twitter so you can see updates on Twitter whenever new content becomes available, as well as other announcements related to Cool Enough to Code. You can also help us out by becoming a patron on our page by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/coolenoughToCode and then clicking on Become a Patron, and there you can find out more information about how you can support our work with Cool Enough to Code. And like always, you can check us out online at coolenoughToCode.com. There you can find a schedule of all of the upcoming lessons that we have. You can also find out more information and reach out to us online here, and you can also watch the live stream as it comes out each week on coolenoughToCode.com as well. And like always, thanks for watching this lesson on Cool Enough to Code.